Welcome to the Rich Flow of Life podcast. Join Valerie Kanay, the award-winning authority author, as she takes you on a journey for your personal evolution. Valerie Kanay talks to enlightened featured guests who hold the keys to unlock your unique life situation. They each bring to the table their very powerful personal spin to inspire and empower you to learn to step up your game into the rich flow of life.
Hello, everybody. I'm Valerie Kanay, and today our featured guest is Marc Kelly. Marc is such a fascinating and phenomenal guy, so I'm so proud, pleased, and honored to have him with us today on our program. Let me tell you a bit about him. Marc is an entrepreneur and the one and only. He's the founder and CEO of Mr. Refined magazine, and he also is a business consultant and a photographer, an adjunct professor at NYU, that's New York University. I want to tell you just a little something that Marc told me that he really doesn't share with just anybody. And here it is. Marc, a little well-kept secret is that, with Mr. Refined, he just saw a need for men. He knew every man is a real gentleman inside. And being a gentleman means there are certain things, certain structure, certain stature that you got to have a swag about yourself. So Marc just dug deep into himself and he pulled all of that out to express himself. And so now with Mr. Refined, he brings that to the table. That's his spin on life. And he's so unique, so brilliant to be conscious of these things. And now he want to share with any and everybody who want to know how to be a refined gentleman. And that's why I thought I'd bring him here with us today. And Marc, welcome to the program.
Valerie, thank you for having me on. I really appreciate the opportunity, and it's cool to kind of see your growth and what you're doing with your brand. And I'm happy to be a part of your development.
I thank you so much. And Marc helps me out behind the scenes with a lot of my paper and all kind of stuff because he's part of the Harlem Business Allegiance and all that. Oh, we're not going to get into all that kind of stuff. But Marc does a lot. And he's highly responsible for a lot of the things that I do today. But back to our topic at hand, Marc, I know that with you, entrepreneurship is so very important. And you're an entrepreneur, like I say, successfully so. Everybody knows about Marc in Harlem. Everybody knows about Marc in New York. Everybody knows about Marc all over the world. So just give us a little deeper inside look into Marc Kelly.
Sure. When it comes to entrepreneurship, it's something that I realized was integral to, what we look at as the economy and the world around us. So much of what this country has been built on was on taking a chance, following a dream, pushing forward with, whatever it is you had in your head and just going for it, right?
Right.
And one of those things that, in that, I always said to myself that if I was to make an impact on this world, how would I do that? And that would be by, creating something that would, live well beyond me and also empowering others to do it as well. Hence why I've been a business consultant for the last 6 years and helping people, develop their ideas, help them with executing and business development, because I really feel like everyone should be empowered to chase their dreams and develop their business ideas and kind of take that to the next level.
Awesome. And so, like I said in the intro, Marc, you've been real fundamental in helping me get off the ground. I've been doing this now for about a good 4 months at the time of this interview. And I know that you're passionate about entrepreneurship. And as a spinoff of entrepreneurship is a thing called branding. And I actually met you in your personal branding workshop. And so what can you tell us about every entrepreneur should be branded?
When it comes to branding, it's a very interesting thing. And, as you know, the workshop that I taught was 2 hours. So I can talk about this for quite some time. But in terms of like the main points that anyone who is looking into branding themselves or their business, the first thing is consistency. Definitely have to be consistent with your messaging across all channels, all your social media, your emails, your logo, your website. Everything should look the same. It should sound the same. Consistency is very important because when you engage with your customer base, you want them to know that it's coming from you. You want them to get that same feeling, whether it be a feeling of luxury, a feeling of status, whatever that emotional connection people make to you and your brand, you want them to have that experience every single time. Additionally, with branding, you have to understand that it's not something that you can rush. You have to take the time out to figure out, who you are in the marketplace. Are you a luxury solution? Are you a value, low cost solution? Is your business a family style business? Is that the feel that you want to give your customers? Because that's what people will resonate. People make purchasing decisions based on feelings. It's not always based on price or just because it has the prettiest color. Even if it is based on price or the prettiest color, it's still emotionally driven. So, understanding who you are and what you want to represent and making sure that you convey that to your customers.
Awesome. Cool. So go ahead and talk about branding from that standpoint now that we know the man is going to move from where he's at now to where he wants to go into his future self. So give a little bit more on that.
So when you're thinking about personal branding, it's a very transient concept. It's something where you're always going to be adjusting who you are, how you want people to perceive you. And it's important that, especially in the digital age, that what you're doing online is very consistent with who you are and who you want people to know you as. For instance, being someone who studies branding and teaches people about it, I struggled with personal branding for a little while, mainly because, especially with the Mr. Refined brand, it's figuring out, okay, people have certain expectations of who I am and who that is, and then trying to balance that.
What are the expectations that they have?
It's interesting. It's all over the map, right? You have some people who are expecting me to be very meek and quiet and looking like, your favorite nephew from the church. Have other people who think that, I listen to nothing but smooth jazz and, sip green tea and I'm like a Zen master. And then you have other people who think that all my life is fashion and I'm just the fashion killer of sorts and things like that. And all of these things are in some ways true, right? But it's not it's not all that I am.
It's not the total package.
It's not the total package.
Right.
I also listen to, hip hop and rap music and can, probably recite the latest Future lyrics. I smoke cigars and I drink, right?
And you ride a motorcycle.
And I ride a motorcycle. And when I'm pushing out my personality digitally, I have to be very conscious of how my words impact people's perception of my brand, and the things that I share, the articles that I share, the images that I share, making sure that when I say something, I touch on a controversial topic, that I'm presenting the information well. And it's not like one of those things where it's like, oh, you have to walk on eggshells, because I'm being who I am. And also baby stepping people into what that is, right? People have a perceived notion of who I am, and then kind of just saying, hey, yeah, I'm some of that, but I also listen to trap music, so don't judge me, because so do you, right? You go to church and you party on Saturday and you go to church on Sunday. And it's like, there's no judgment, right? We're all humans, we're all flawed beings, and that's okay. But building that in to what your personal brand is what gets people comfortable with it. It's what humanizes your brand. And then it helps people to connect with you that much more deeply. And that's what I found that has happened, is that the more honest and candid that I am with certain things, and, making sure that I'm, again, like I talked about earlier, being consistent with your branding and making sure that people have that emotional connection to what my brand is making people more loyal to my brand, more comfortable with it, and they engage with it a lot more.
Right. And I just love your brand, Mark, and I just love you. And I love your candor, and I love your energy and your style, your whole presentation about everything and anything that you do. You know that I'm a brand loyalist when it comes to Mark Kelly, Mr. Refined. Just tell us a little bit more in depth about that, Mark, because I really want to get into your head about, the whole origin of Mr. Refined. I gave my spin on it, but what is it? How does it really strike up for you?
Sure. So Mr. Refine is a men's fashion and lifestyle magazine that I launched in 2013. The goal and the onus behind it was kind of what you touched on, that introducing men to kind of just refining themselves, to not be cliche and use the word refine too much. But it's really this constant process of improvement. As a man, you always are trying to be better. And I looked at this kind of luxury men's lifestyle market as an opportunity to also tell my story in an interesting way. Because for me, I grew up in Harlem and, going through understanding what it meant to be a man at, all 10, 13, 14, 15 years old.
Well, tell us, Mark, what does it mean to be a man at 10, 13, 14 years old?
It's a very transient concept, right? It's a lot of chest pumping and, trying to prove you're the biggest, the baddest, or, just kind of always proving your worth, right?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of territorialism, and it goes to some very primitive activities, so to speak, if we put it in that context.
Okay.
And you realize that as you grow, you get into college age and post college age, and where I'm at, I'm in my 30s at this point. Every stage along my life and my career was a different transformation. It was going from being a guy, not a street guy per se, but a guy in the streets doing regular stuff, going to school, whatever, to being a guy who's now in corporate boardrooms and having to find a way to adjust.
I see.
Same that I do to assert myself on a basketball court, for instance, isn't the same thing I'm going to do in a boardroom.
Right.
So, and then, the same way that I dress when I go to play basketball isn't the same way I dress when I go to work, or, when I'm going to play and hang out and things like that. So, Mr. Refine was kind of the idea behind it was to kind of create this platform through which to kind of show guys the difference, right? And then also the juxtaposition, because I'm still the same guy from the basketball courts, right? I'm just a little more polished when that time comes. When I talk to my friends, I can be casual, but when I'm doing business, obviously there's a certain level of professional decorum that you have. So Mr. Refine is kind of this thing where it's taking guys from where they are to where they want to be, and then guys from where they want to be to that next level.
I got you. And so that's a really wonderful thing, Mark, that you are so brilliant and that you're able to see that you're the same guy, but you're going to have different key positions at different levels and different times in your life based on what's pertinent at that time. Because some people, we can all witness as we live out here and we see the things that happen around us. You can't help but see it. You can see this one guy, he's wearing his sweats and he's in those sweats all the time. And he just needs somebody to shake him up just a little bit and say, okay, look, it's time to shake out of this. This is a different origin of what you're doing right now, and you got to step it up just a bit, right?
Right.
Okay, so that's really cool.
Yeah. And then the other thing about it, too, sorry to cut you off, but it's also making it cool, right? You see guys and you see suits, and people think of suits and dressing well as something that you do on a special occasion when you have an interview, or, if you're going to court, or you're going, to a funeral or church and things like that. And it's no, you can get dressed on a Saturday afternoon when, you're going to brunch, or, you're going to have a couple of drinks with the fellas. You don't have to go in a full blown suit, but putting on a blazer with your favorite pair of sneakers and jeans and a t-shirt is cool. It's a different vibe, right? It shows that you're an adult almost, right? It's not to say that it's just any other way that doesn't make you an adult, but it's it's just it's a different polish. It's a different reception that people will have to you when they see you put pride into the way you dress. And, to kind of bring it full circle with everything that Mr. Refine represents, it's not just about the visual representation. The visual is kind of that first step of, I am a man, I'm a gentleman, respect me as such. And then the other things that we talk about relationships, we talk about travel, we talk about family, we talk about community happenings, and you're really just trying to, shape people's minds around these conversations in ways where it's not necessarily the shock journalism tactics. Let's be polarized about this Bill Cosby situation, right? As for an example, or, the Tamir Rice thing. It's yes, these things were angry. Yes, these things we're upset about, but let's have an educated discussion about it. Let's talk about it from a standpoint of, there's always three sides to the story, yours, mine's, and the truth.
Right.
So it's like, let's debate the truth. Let's debate the facts of the conversation, the facts of the situation, and then maybe come away from it a little more enlightened than we went in when we were emotionally charged. So, Mr. Refined is, obviously about this constant improvement and this constant refinement of yourself, of your psyche, of your lifestyle, and everything that revolves around that.
Awesome. I love that, Mark. So what you're basically doing is just bridging the gap from where you are now to where you're going to be and want to be. And so when you bridge that gap, like you say, it's so important to recognize where you are and where you're headed. And on that pathway, you're going to be in transition. And so what you're doing is you just help the menfolk along in that transition. So I think it's just a wonderful, incredible thing that you're doing. And I just don't know anybody who can do it any better, although that's my preference towards you. You know that.
I appreciate you.
Yeah. So you're bridging that gap. So for all the guys who are where they are, it's a wonderful thing. No one is saying anything bad, indifferent. It's just that it's all of life is a progressional process. And we're all in transition. That includes Mark, myself, you, everybody. We're from a place of where we are now to where we're going to be to where we're headed. Right, Mark?
Correct.
So as our program comes to an end, I do want to give you the opportunity to give me your final thought and reach out and let folks know how they can contact you, okay?
Sure. I guess in terms of final thoughts around branding and lifestyle is, it's one of those things where you should take yourself serious, but not too seriously. Be comfortable in who you are and the essence of what you're doing. Keep your heart pure and it'll show. People will connect with you, not just on a cerebral level, but also on an emotional one. And if you're being true to who you are, people will always connect with that. And in terms of connecting, if you'd like to connect with me, you can look me up at mrrefined.com. That's www.mrrefined.com. And you can email me at info@mrrefined.com.
Awesome. Well, Mark, I love you dearly again and again and again. And I'm so thankful and grateful to have you in my life and be part of Valerie Kanay Talks. So at this point, our program has come to an end, and I want to say goodbye.
Valerie, thank you for having me on the show. I appreciate you very much.
All right. Bye-bye, Mark.
You have been listening to the Rich Flow of Life podcast with host Valerie Kanay. We're most appreciative you took the time to be with us, and thank you. For more action, go subscribe to Valerie Kanay Talks YouTube channel and like us on Facebook at Valerie Kanay Talks and follow us on Twitter at Valerie Kanay. Until next time, we love ya.